My name is Lyn Ossome. I teach at the Makerere Institute of Social Research in Kampala, Uganda. I'm currently visiting professor at Yale University for the fall semester. My work is broadly concerned with questions of emancipation and questions of freedom. Whether I am thinking through land and agrarian questions, these are my, broadly the research areas in which I work. Whether it's land and agrarian questions, whether it's questions of women's rights, whether it's questions of democracy. It is always a concern with a particular concern with the situation of women, with the gender questions across the world, but especially in the global south. I do a lot of my research work my work has been in South Africa, in Uganda, in Kenya, where I come from. And I work in the intersection between politics and political economy. What this means is it's not really, I'm very cautious about the sort of disciplinary enclaves we might find ourselves in. And so I see, even as I say politics or political economy, I say this very much, from a methodological perspective and of course a theoretical perspective. I always tell my students that what I feel, my role as a teacher is to impart certain tools regarding how it is that we might understand different questions in the world. We are each confronted by a different set of questions depending on our context, on our particular histories, on our particular interests, on our particular experiences. And the way we answer the questions that we formulate, the question that you formulate is key. Whether you are a researcher, an activist, that is our primary concern. And so I see my work not in a disciplining sense, but in a methodological perspective. And in this regard, therefore, for example, when I'm thinking of the question of women, as an emancipatory question, it is one thing to say broadly that women are excluded, or women are subjugated, or women are oppressed. But a more accurate way from my feminist political economy perspective is then to ask which women, how does this particular form of violence, if I'm talking of the question of violence, how does this particular form of violence express itself in a country such as Kenya, for example, that has had, has been independent since the for 5 decades now, with a particular colonial history. And how does the question of violence against women express itself differently in a country like South Africa, one of, a new democracy, so to speak? And then to go into a critique of that state itself, of the particular history itself. So really seeing the subject of our research, of what we study, or how we try to understand the world, really locating them in where they are, not removing them and abstracting them, in other words, getting lost in broad theoretical formulations, which in a circular way always leads me back to the critique of democracy. Are we understanding it as a living concept, or have we internalized its normative iteration, especially now in the sort of liberal democratic context? Yeah, so in a real sense, my concern as a scholar, as a researcher, is, a keen interest in histories, in the structural context within which we work, and how this then express questions in ever-changing ways.